What comes to mind when you hear the word deposit? According to dictionary.com, it means to place something for safekeeping or trust. But for my guest, Kelton Shelley, a deposit is an investment in himself, one that will pay off down the road. Kelton may not be the biggest endurance athlete I've ever spoken with. In fact, he might be one of the smallest, but his work ethic is unmatched. He pushes himself harder than most, making consistent deposits toward his achievements. Get ready to be inspired to overcome obstacles and maybe even rock out in a metal band with my guest, Kelton Shelley.
Welcome to Journey with Jake. This is a podcast about adventure and how through our adventures we can overcome the challenges of life that come our way. While I expect you will learn some things about different adventures, this show will entertain you. Each episode will feature a different guest or guests as they share experiences and stories from the different adventures they have been on. Not only will you be entertained, but you will also hear the failures and trials each guest faces and what they have done or are doing to overcome the hardships that come their way. My goal is to take each of us on a journey through the experiences of my guests with the hope that you'll be entertained and inspired to overcome your day-to-day challenges. After all, it's not all about the destination as it is about the journey.
Welcome back to the show. I'm Jake Bushman, your host of Journey with Jake. If this is your first time listening, welcome. I'm thrilled to have you here. And to my returning listeners, thank you so much for your support. It truly means the world to me. Journey with Jake is proud to be part of the Podmatch Podcast Network. If you're on the hunt for more amazing podcasts, check out the Podmatch Network at podmatch.com/network to discover a variety of fantastic shows. If you'd like to see clips from the show and get to know me a little better, follow me on Instagram at Journey with Jake Podcast. That's where I'm most active. So drop by, leave a comment, and say hi. I love hearing from you. And don't forget, Journey with Jake is also on YouTube. Just search for Journey with Jake Podcast, subscribe to the channel, and hit that like button to stay updated with new content. Now let's talk about today's guest, Kelton Shelley. Kelton is an endurance athlete who thrives on challenges like Spartan races. But his journey hasn't been easy. After battling leukemia as a child, Kelton learned to channel his resilience into relentless hard work, turning his challenges into an advantage. His story is truly inspiring. If you enjoyed this episode, I highly recommend checking out my conversation with Michael Whiteside in episode 44, where we dive into the world of ultra running. All right, let's get to it. Here's my conversation with Kelton Shelley. I'm pretty excited today. I've got Kelton Shelley on the show with me today. I know Kelton reached out a few weeks ago, and I was looking at who Kelton is. First of all, everyone knows I love endurance athletes. I love runners. I love hearing their stories. They're always accomplishing something. So Kelton, I'm excited to have you here. Welcome to Journey with Jake.
Kelton's very excited to be here today. Sorry, I started with third person because I told my friends I would try to be third person, but it's not going to last very long. So that'd be funny, a whole podcast with third person. But anyway, I'm excited to be here. And I want to say thank you to you because there's so many people out there, that have stories and, are just like, I don't want to call them like regular people, but, just go to work, do their thing every day, but they have awesome things to share, but they kind of get lost in translation because of these, you have these people who are like the bigger stars or whatever, or the big athletes, musicians, actors, stuff like that. And so I feel like it's good what you're doing to get, hey, I can relate to this person because they get up, they go to work just like I do every day and, that kind of thing. So thank you for doing this.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that. Thanks for saying that. Yeah, I think that's one thing I love about doing this show is I don't want to say we're everyday normal people, but we are, but we're all extraordinary in our own ways. And that's why I enjoy hearing people. I have people like you on who have your own extraordinary stories. And maybe to one person it doesn't mean so much, but maybe another person it does. We've all got something to share. So that's why I'm excited to have you here. Like I always do on the show, I want to know a little bit about who you are. And this is the first time you and I have talked. So I want to know kind of just a little background, where you're from, all that good stuff, if you don't mind.
Okay, yep. Just born and raised here in Utah my whole life. Grew up in West Point, Utah. It's about 3 miles west of Clearfield. Clearfield's by Hiller Force Base, if you're not familiar with the northern Utah area. But just grew up there. Had a fun little friend group we hung out with growing up that we did all kinds of adventures with, played all kinds of sports growing up, went to Syracuse High School, later graduated from college at Weber State University. Yeah, just kind of stayed in this area. I now live in Clearfield, Utah, so didn't move too far from West Point, but yeah, that's a little bit. Yeah, West Point's like a small town. I remember it was a big deal a few years ago when they got a Smith's there. It's really blown up. They have like 3 or 4 schools there now. They're building some more. When I grew up, it was just more like a farm town. It's a type of community where you drive or walk down the street, people will wave at you. Super friendly, good, like tight knit community. So yeah,
What did you study at Weber State?
at Weber State, I got my degree in health promotion and I got a minor in sport coaching. I should be working at the health department. I have not worked one day in my degree. So, yeah, I've done some other stuff just having a degree, getting other jobs. So, yeah, it's kind of fun that way, but I'm a big believer in my degree because, it's just kind of promoting health and having things that you can control so you don't have to go to the doctor, basically, having things in place that you can control your own health rather than having to rely on medicine or whatever it might be. So, yeah.
Gotcha. Growing up, only child, you have siblings. What's kind of the story there?
Yeah, I have one older brother. More on him later when we talk about some other things. But yeah, and then just my mom and dad. So yeah, we're about 3 years apart, me and my brother. We got to play some sports together, kind of like stuff like that. So it was good. It wasn't this huge gap to where, he's off doing his own thing and I'm still over here. So it was kind of cool. He's always been a big part of my life. So I'm grateful to have him.
Awesome. Very good. So one thing I love, the reason I love talking to endurance athletes is you have to overcome things to do what you do. And I think as a youngster, you had something that you had to overcome. You had leukemia. Do you mind kind of sharing a little bit about what went on there?
Yeah, so I remember we were in St. Louis. My aunt lives out there. I just remember being super weak on this. This was when I was 4. And then I just like couldn't walk. I'd have like my parents carry me everywhere and stuff, super low on energy. I got back home. Long story short, I think I went to the Davis Hospital. It's near a house, and they were like, "Oh no, he's got to go to primary children's." So I went down to primary children's. Long story short, I got diagnosed with leukemia. Just kind of in and out of the hospital for 4 years. I had it till I was like 8 years old. More in than out of the hospital, I should say. I remember being in there a lot, and I had to have chemotherapy. Went completely bald radiation therapy. I got a bone marrow transplant. This is where my brother comes back in because to have one of those, your bloods kind of have to match, and he was the match for me, and so he basically saved my life. He donated his bone marrow to me, and so that was a big deal. So I think that's why we have a pretty good connection too. Is he literally saved my life. So
Right.
yeah, in and out of the hospital. This is a fun story I like to tell. People like get 18, older, I got my first tattoo, stuff like that. Like, and I like to tell people I got my first tattoos when I was 5 because for some of the treat, they had to know where stuff was. So I have like these dots. They're very hard to see, but I still have them obviously because it's a tattoo. But they kind of just go down because it was like helping them find. I think it has to do with my lungs. I can't quite remember, but yeah. So that's my story. I like to tell people I got a tattoo when I was tattoos
When you're 5 years old.
so, yeah,
You don't have to wait till you're 18.
Yeah, as a 5-year-old, like, yeah, that was not, it was not fun. But yeah, so in and out of the hospital, I don't remember. I remember at one point, I want to say I had an over under 20% chance to live, and so, but I think I got through that because I don't remember a day my mom was not there with me in the hospital. She was always there, just always, being super supportive, helping me, just, on top of it, had to sacrifice a lot to be there, and so I'm super grateful for that. And I feel like, I don't know how I got through it, but I ended up surviving, obviously. Yeah, she was always there, and then we had an outpouring of support from friends, family, stuff like that. So that was, yeah. And now I'm here, and yeah, I'm grateful.
And 4 years old. I mean, when you go back to someone who's 4, and obviously you probably can't remember a whole lot right at the beginning there, but being 4 years old, I mean, that's an age where they're active and you're young and you want to move around, and to be so tired.
Mm-hmm.
And because of this, because you had leukemia, you had something going on, and then 4 years. I mean, that's a lot of years, until you're 8 years old to be in and out of the hospital, mostly in, sounds like. That's tough on a kid. Do you have any memories of, I don't know, maybe just, I mean, I guess the sound of the hospital, like the beeps, and do you have like any thoughts of like what comes to your mind? Because I know you were little back then, but what
I
comes to your mind?
have, it's like I have still images. Like I remember certain things. They're like kind of a picture. Like, oh, I remember this. Like I remember kind of what the room looked like. I remember when this happened, kind of what it looked like, you know. There's not really like a defining like thing, but it's just kind of still, you know, images, stuff like that. So
So
yeah.
4 years old till the time you're about 8. How old are you now, Kelton?
I'm 28. 28.
28 years old. Okay. All right. So 20 years ago,
Mhm.
basically, when you got out, what kind of, is there any lingering effects or anything that it has on you?
So I was told that, you know, I'm going to have a lower immune system. Some of the things we had to do, I'm a very short guy. Like, I'm only like, I like to go off the scale I found one time that I'm 5 feet tall, but I'm probably more like 4'11", because there's some things that kind of stunted my growth when I was going through all these treatments, you know, and so that kind of had an effect. I didn't have. I remember in the hospital, I really wanted to go to school and be around the other kids and do those things. You know, I didn't go to school a full year until fourth grade, and so I missed out on kind of those interactions with other kids. You know, for a little bit. I still had my friend group and some other things, but yeah, I just remember really wanting to go to school and be around that. Yeah, basically those things: lower immune system, and then yeah, being short, going
Being
wanting to go to
short.
school. Yeah.
And I wonder, I'd seen some videos and stuff. I'm like, Kelton looks pretty short. I didn't know if that was affected or not. It sounds like it did.
And
Did
funny
that affect
story
you?
on. Oh,
Say
sorry.
again, sorry.
I was gonna say funny stories on this. Like I can pass as probably being a 15-year-old sometimes, like right now. So I still have times I go into the restaurant with family, you know, or friends, and do you need a kids menu? And sometimes I'll take one. And so that's kind of fun. I still have people when I go to the gym that will go up and like, I don't think he's old enough to be here, like, you know, because they want you to be with an adult, you know, and then they have to be like, no, we know Kelton, you know, kind of a thing. But so I still get stuff like that. I think it's pretty funny personally, but yeah, because sometimes I'll like play along with it, and they're like, "Oh no, I'm actually 28," and then they're like, "Oh okay." But yeah, I've gotten through security at places, just not even checking me. So, um, kind of fun that way. But
Well,
yeah,
I love your attitude about it because you could be bitter about it. What would that do? It wouldn't do anything if you were bitter about it. So instead you kind of tend to laugh it off. And do you ever have moments though where it bugs you? Do you ever get kind of like, okay, come on, guy?
yeah. Sometimes I honestly do, just because it feels like sometimes I'm not as bad anymore at like getting kind of about it, but like it almost feels like somebody's like talking not down to you, but like I don't really know what to think of this, so they're kind of talking to you different, you know, or whatever. So kind of that sometimes, but it doesn't really bug me that much because honestly, like I had somebody ask me a while ago, like, man, if you could be like 5'8", you know, 5'9" above, what would you? And I said, I thought about it, and I said no. You know, I like being this because I don't think I feel like I'd just be kind of regular. Like I wouldn't be as driven to do all these things that I do, and so I'm actually super grateful for it, and I'm glad that it's happened. So yeah,
It helps drive you. That's
yes,
kind of what I'm gathering.
yeah.
Were you ever bullied in school?
You know what? This is funny. I no, but I was in my head the whole time. Oh, these people don't like me because I'm short, or like all this stuff. But I honestly went back through, you know, the all the times through school, all this stuff, and it never happened. Nobody ever bullied me, but I put in my head sometimes that, you know, like they mistreated me because I even like had to finally do that even when I was like 24. Be like, dude, that never happened. You know, nobody ever bullied you. You know, so sometimes I think you can convince yourself things have actually happened or like are actually really bad, and it's really nothing. You know, you have to really go back through and did that actually happen or were you perceiving it that way, you know? So
That's a
yeah.
good way, interesting way to look at it. I think sometimes we get in our own heads and we, in a sense, you're bullying yourself by putting these thoughts in your head. That's an interesting way to look at it. I thought it was interesting you talking about being short and how you wouldn't change that because it's kind of helped give you that drive and kind of who you are. I want to read something that I saw on your Instagram profile and kind of just
Okay.
ask you about it. It says on there, it says, accomplish great things despite limitations or circumstance. What does that mean to you?
To me, that means that, you can convince yourself all these things. I'm not going to do anything because I'll just use my example. When I was 4, I had leukemia, or like, this happened in my family, or like people being like, oh, this person said this to me when I was trying to date or something. And so I'm never going to go on a date again. You can convince these things, and like that becomes a limitation to you. And so it's just like, hey, what's the next thing? This might get some bad traffic, but like anxiety is like kind of a word right now, right? Like people, oh, I have anxiety about this or that. But I feel like anxiety is something, it's telling you to do something that's uncomfortable that you need to do. So, like, for example, if I'm scared to talk to people, I have anxiety about talking to people. What you really need to do is go talk to more people. And so that's how you overcome those limitations in your own mind of, oh, I'm socially weird, I'm awkward. Or like, oh, I have anxiety about playing instruments in front of people. You need to go play an instrument. You might be really good, and that's a talent people need to see. But it's kind of, that's more or less what that means. It's like finding where your troubles are, the things that make you uncomfortable, and actually just going and doing them. So
it's a good way to look at it. I appreciate you sharing that. So leukemia when you're 4 till you're about 8 kind of stunted your growth a little bit. Where did this whole endurance thing come about? How did you get into doing that? Because that's pretty crazy to go from almost dying to now you're running. I don't know. I think you said you did 30 some odd races this past year.
Yeah. I did 32 this year. I've done 81 total in under 4 years. Come March, it'll be 4 years since I very first did my first race. But honestly, like, I grew up loving sports. I played everything. I played lacrosse. I played football. I played, soccer, basketball, baseball, all those sports. And I just loved, like, I don't know if it has to do with my size as well, being like, oh, I have to prove myself, like, 'cause you have that, what they call it, the little guy syndrome or whatever. But like, I just grew up loving sports and stuff like that. And honestly, this came from, actually, I'll go back a little bit. I played lacrosse in high school, and I quit my sophomore year, and I love lacrosse, but I really didn't want to go do the conditioning again. I hated running. I hated doing all the stuff we did for conditioning. I worked super hard and got better the year before, but then I was like, I'm not doing that again. So I kind of played it off to everybody. Oh, I'm in 3 bands right now. I have some stuff going on at home. I'm done with lacrosse, kind of a thing. And so, anyway, I'm always somebody who's I need something to play or something to do. And so I found this flag football league in Salt Lake City, and I started getting super into that. And so it's weird because endurance racing that I do now actually stems from flag football, because I wanted to get super good at flag football and like be really good in that league and stuff like that. And so I started going to the gym. I'd do this crazy stuff where I would, like, 2017, my fitness routine was I'd get up in the morning, I'd run around this track. And when I run, like, I would sprint like the little part of the track, and then I'd like run, and not just jog, like run that, like, the long part. And I do that for 45 minutes straight. And then I would do like some abs and the stair climber for a minute. This is all in the morning. And then I'd go to work. And then after work, I'd spend 45 minutes on the elliptical, about a half hour on the stair climber, go lift weights for an hour, and then go run 3 more miles. And then, oh, and sometimes I'd swim before that too. So I got like super into, oh, I've got to, do all this stuff, and I got to get in really good shape because flag football is my thing. That's the only thing I had going on. Like, I didn't have anything else really, going on. And I remember seeing people's race shirts during this time and being like, oh, I don't need that to, I don't need a stupid shirt to to do. Like, I'm just going to keep doing this stuff because I can, kind of a thing. And so, anyway, long story short, I did stuff like that probably, end of 2016 to up to like 2020. And because it was all about that league, and some other stuff got thrown in. I got into like pickleball and softball and stuff. So I was like, I want to be like the guy, for all of these, the most in shape dude. And so, and then we had a mutual friend on our team. Me and my brother played on the softball team. His name was Andrew, and he knew about this stuff. My brother was kind of getting into it at the same time too, doing similar stuff. And he was like, you guys would do super good at a Spartan race. And he's done them before. he's like, there's one it was in 2021, March. He's like, let's go down and do it. And we grabbed my cousin and him and me and my brother, and we went down, and I just kept, training hard and stuff, doing all
Where
that
was
kind
this Spartan race at?
the Spartan race, very first one was in Mesquite, Nevada,
Okay.
but it was actually labeled as Las Vegas, but that's not anywhere close to Las Vegas. But yeah, we went down there. I remember getting in the starting corral. Everybody's there, ready to go. And I remember looking around at people and being like, "Man, I don't belong here. These are like alpha, like big deal people." And then I remember on that race, I found myself ahead of all of them, and that's honestly where I started to believe, hey, I can maybe be pretty good at this, or pretty good at this whole thing. And so I ended up finishing that first race. I remember in like 43 minutes, super fast. Had a good time, and then from there, I got the trifecta that year, and they kind of just kept compiling onto each other. What can I do next? I wonder what it's like if I do a regular 5K without obstacles. I wonder how fast that could be.
Yeah, let's pause for a second, because a Spartan race is a 5K but with obstacles.
Yeah, Spartan. So I'll go back. Spartan. There's actually 4 different ones. There's they're all trail race based. There's some stadium ones and other things they do, but for the most part, it's a trail race 5K, and you do a 5K with 20 obstacles. That's called the sprint. And then they have the super, and the super is a 10K with 25 obstacles. And then they have the beast, and the beast is a half marathon with 30 obstacles. And then they have the ultra, and the ultra is 30 miles. You do the beast twice plus like an extra loop to get that extra 2 miles for the 15. You do it twice, and then there's 60 obstacles. So you do basically the whole beast twice with all those. And yeah, so I just kept kind of going, hey, I'm going to get my trifecta. The trifecta is you have to get a sprint, a super, and a beast. And a beast can also alternate for an ultra. So you can do an ultra or a beast to get a trifecta. But I did those 3. And then I was like, man, I want to see what I can get just like on a 10K. And so I just go sign up for 10Ks. Man, I want to see what I can get on a half marathon. So I just go do half marathons, full marathons. Like I just kind of kept going. But yeah.
And you were okay, and you were doing well on these, because you had quite the routine. Just you're like, flag football, I'm gonna work my tail off for flag football, doing a crazy heavy workout, getting yourself in shape. And then it led to, let me do this Spartan thing. Can you tell me some of the obstacles? What kind of obstacles are we talking here?
Yeah, and I actually got a story to share on this one.
Perfect. Let's hear it.
The thing with some of these obstacles is some of them are based for maybe a little bit, smaller people, but a lot of them aren't. Like, it's your advantage to be a little bit taller and all that stuff. So some of the obstacles are, you're going to like jump over walls. You're going to do like the rope climb. You have to climb up this 20-foot rope off the ground, touch the bell. There's like lifting based ones. We have to pick up like 100-pound Atlas ball, the big round cement ball, carry it back and forth. There's monkey bars. There's like those rings, like those Olympic rings that you go across. Just some other ones they've come up with are crazy. There's like ones where you have to carry a bucket for a certain amount of time. Just all kinds of things. And sometimes the course itself is the obstacle. Like if you do the race at Utah, it has all these hills because it's at a ski resort. It's at Snow Basin. But I've also done one in Arizona where it's just, flat. And so sometimes like you're running through and there's like rivers and streams you have to cross. And so it's kind of like this, it is kind of an adventure in a sense, like every race is. So it's kind of crazy, but.
Well, and I can see how for someone who might be a little on the shorter side, how it could be a little difficult. Those rings might be a little, for someone who's got length in their arms who can reach, things like that. I could see how, but then there's might be things that you have advantage with, maybe the stuff they have to get low to the ground and crawl under things like that. Maybe you have an advantage like that. Probably, kind of hit or miss both ways. I think people are probably shocked when they see you cruising by them. You kind of get those looks like people are like, whoa, where'd this guy come from?
Yeah, I've definitely gotten those. This one I just did in South Carolina, I ended up winning my age group. I got first and I got in the top 10. And this was on the Ultra. This was the 30-mile one with the 2 loops.
Wow.
And there's this one called Stairway to Sparta. It's basically this big A-frame. And then on this side of it, this other side's a giant ladder for when you get to the top, you climb down. But this side has like you have to jump pretty high, and there's like those rock wall things, those red rock wall things you see. You have to jump up, grab those, kind of climb up it, and then grab the ladder and climb over. It's one where a lot of people miss it and they have to do a penalty. But I run up to this thing. There's this big crowd. When you do the ultra, like people know, hey, the ultra's coming. You let them through. You get to be first in line if there's like a line of people going into the obstacles. And nobody's getting this thing. And this was on my second time around. The first time, there's this little red block and it kind of helps you get up to it. And the second time I came around, I failed it the first time, so I had to do the penalty loop. The lady was like, oh, she remembered me. She's like, I asked them, you can use the red block if you want this time, or like anybody can, you know? And I was like, okay. And I looked at her and I said, screw that. And I ran up and I grabbed it and I climbed all the way up just like normal. And I did it. I don't know if something like just got into me. And then I remember all the people were just like, what the? Like, it was kind of probably the coolest moment I've had on a Spartan race. But yeah, I didn't mean that to be like mean to her. I was just like in a mode where I gotta.
Yeah, no, you had that competitive juice flowing and you went and just did it.
Yeah. So that was kind of cool. And it was, I don't know, I remember passing the obstacle before that. And I was like, they told me like, hey, you're in the top 10. And I was like, really? Because people get so spread out on that. You don't know who's ahead of you, who's behind you. You don't know who's in your age group at those either. Because, you know, I look like I'm in the 15-year-old age group. So anyway, yeah, I remember, so I started the second lap. Because I remember I was a little tentative on the first lap, like obstacles and stuff. And I was like, dude, like, just commit and find a way to get through these obstacles. Don't like teeter, you know, on it. And so I just did that and got through all of them. And then I started to believe, you know, I'm like, hey man, like you belong here. Like you start to convince yourself sometimes that, oh man, like I'm not as good as these other people or whatever, you know. But that's where I was kind of like, no, you belong here. Look how well you're doing, kind of a thing. So yeah,
That's a tricky thing, and that's something I struggle with. I sometimes think, oh, what am I doing? I'm doing this podcast. I don't, I'm not up there with these other podcasters or whatever. You kind of did the same thing. We kind of, how do you talk yourself out of that? How do you get to the point where like, because you said, then you're like, hey, I realized I do belong here. How do you get to that point?
So this actually comes from me and my buddy, Chris, this last summer. I got him into Spartan races too. We went in, like we're out there in 100-degree weather, like carrying these buckets back and forth, doing burpees, running around the park, all this crazy stuff. And to answer your question, like I do that stuff on a daily basis. Like I work out 7 days a week, twice a day, all this, stuff. And I'm sitting there, and honestly, for me, it was, dude, you put yourself through hell every week. Like, why would you not give this your best effort? Why do you do all of that if you're just gonna like mosey through it and like, that kind of thing? So I kind of think back to, hey, I've put in the work for this, and like I know what it takes, kind of a thing. And also to people like listening, sometimes you don't feel ready, and like there's people, because in Spartan there's the competitive heat, right? You wear the red headband and people know you're competing and they actually keep track of you and stuff. Then there's the open heat, and that's just the one where you kind of do it to complete it, And these people were talking about what they did to train for the ultra, and it was some crazy stuff. And I was like, holy crap. But they're doing the open heat, and then but in their mind they're still saying, oh, I couldn't do competitive. And I'm like, why? You train super hard. Put yourself in the game. You know what I mean? Stop staying on the sideline being like, I'm not good enough. Go and figure it out. I mean, at the end, if you don't do good and competitive, whatever it is, then you still finished it, and you still a big accomplishment. So put yourself in the game. That's what I'd say. Know that you put in these deposits to be where you're at. So
put yourself in the game. I love that. It's a good way to look at it. Appreciate that. Yeah. Any other Spartan races or just any regular races that you have any thoughts or stories that you want to share?
Yeah, there's a couple I wanted to hit on. My very first marathon was the Ogden Marathon. This is more of a training aspect thing. I did not run 1 mile for that first marathon to train for it, because I was super into HIIT workouts. I do like burpees, like the mountain climbers, like all these body weight, like just being in overwhelming good condition, I'd be on the Stairmaster. I wanted to do everything I could but run, and I got like a 3:25 on my first marathon. And so I'm just like, if you just like, you don't have to go out and run all these miles and stuff. There's other ways to get in shape, is kind of what I learned from that one. But then I also learned that you do have to go out and run, even if you don't want to get more of the wear and tear, the feel of running. Because yeah, like mile 19 at that, I remember I'm like, yeah, I probably should have ran at least a couple times for this. But yeah, I just wanted to share that just to be like, hey, you can do a lot of things, even just being in, just pretty good shape doing other movements and stuff like that. So
I appreciate that. That's good.
yeah, yep. Another one, I'll hit on that one last. I did the Dead Horse Ultra out in Moab in 2022. This is my favorite race, but it's also the one I did the worst at. I finished like the bottom 5 people. Okay.
Okay, so let's get a little background. So the Dead Horse Ultra, is it a 100-mile race? Is it a 50K? What did you do for this?
Oh yeah. So the Dead Horse Ultra has a 50 mile, it has a 30 mile, and then it has like some other ones. I think it has a 10K and like an 18.
Okay.
I did the 30 mile one.
Okay.
So I just wanted to see where I was at once again. Like, oh, this is just running, no obstacles, kind of a thing. And I was in 4th place for 18 of those 30 miles. And then IT bands blew up. Everything just like hit, And I remember like limping to this station at like mile 20. And I remember telling myself, like every step hurt so bad. That is the worst I've ever felt at a race. And I made it to station 20 and I was like, dude, you can DNF, like, there's no problem with that, whatever. And then I just kept telling myself, well, let's walk down here to this tree and let's see how we feel. And I kind of just did that, and all of a sudden there was 5 miles left, but I'm telling you, every step was horrible and that day. And I kind of limped my way to the finish line and finished it. But that's honestly, I wanted to quit so bad during that race that that's my favorite one I've had, because I know like you can get through pain and stuff to get through to the finish line. So yeah.
So for you, overcoming that pain, because you said every step was brutal.
Yeah.
And I guess I'm kind of looking at it for someone like me. I'm sitting there thinking, okay, how does someone do that? Like, how do you do that? I don't know. I mean, you kind of explained it. You said you get to this tree, and is that just what you did? Was it just one step at a time? Like, how do you do this?
Yeah, one step at a time. But I also, had to convince myself, hey man, like, and this is in November too. So, in my mind, Moab's always been, oh, Moab's always hot. It's always like 90 there. But this was very cold too. And I'm like, man, it's cold. Every step hurts. This totally sucks. But I was like, this is where I want to be. So I had to convince myself, I want to be here. I want to be doing this right now. And so that's kind of how I made it through it as well. Is like, I didn't come clear out here and drive out here to quit, And so I'm going to do what it takes to finish, even if it takes like 10 hours or whatever.
Wow.
So, yeah.
That's why I love talking to ultra runners. Your mentality that you guys have is amazing, and I admire it, because it's just amazing that you can put yourself and figure out how to overcome that pain to where you can keep moving on. Like you said, now you look back and you're like, that was my favorite race, even though it was your toughest race.
Yes.
Amazing. It's amazing.
Yeah. So kind of along the same lines, the other race I wanted to talk about was this was the very first Spartan Ultra I did. This was before Dead Horse, actually. This was at Snow Basin. They don't do the Ultra there anymore. I don't know why, but, well, I know why, because it hurts. That was the very first one I did. This was where I kind of had the mentality of, that one, again, was brutal. Like, not as bad IT bands and stuff, but, like, my hand was torn up from one of the obstacles. I was bleeding, like, all this stuff was going on. And I started, you start to kind of feel bad for yourself. Like, man, well, I have this going on. Nobody else is feeling this way and stuff like that. But that's when it very first hit me. Dude, somebody out here is going through worse than you, and they're still getting after it. And so, yeah, so I kind of like to gain that perspective of, you don't have it all that bad. Like, there's people struggling worse, and it could be worse for you. You're fine. You're still moving, and you're doing pretty good. You're going to finish. So that kind of thing. But also on this one, I ended up, so in Spartan, this is something I missed earlier. Now it's more of like, it's more official. Like, if you fail an obstacle, you run a penalty loop. Like, they have these loops drawn out. You run.
I wanted to ask about what the penalty situation was, because you mentioned having to take a penalty.
Yeah. So that's what it is now. And they actually just threw back in the burpee penalty for like 2 obstacles. But anyway, back when this is 2022, they still had mostly burpees. There were some penalty loops here and there. But if you fail an obstacle, it's 30 burpees. Okay, and I think a big part of Spartan is do, like, there's so many people who do the open heats who, oh, I didn't do it, and they just walk past. So much of a Spartan is doing that's kind of what you paid for. It's part of the experience, doing the penalties. And so I'm doing this ultra. I ended up failing. I'm not going to do math right now, but I failed enough for 420 burpees. And on that ultra, with the 30 miles and everything going on, I ended up doing 420 burpees that day on top of all of that. And so I just wanted to kind of share that, to be like, hey, do kind of what you signed up for, and like, this is part of it. Like, in life, if something goes wrong, you kind of have to get a penalty, and you have to accept that, hey, I messed up and I'm going to move on, but I'm going to take the penalty and I'm just going to keep going. So yeah, so I just wanted to share that as well.
That's a great way to look at it. It's part of the process. It's part of what you got to do. You miss something, you got to do something to make up for it. And instead of, like you said, some people in the open division can just they'll just kind of walk around and not do it.
Yeah.
You did it.
Yeah,
and
you
did
didn't pay
over
for a
400.
hike, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So,
Amazing. That is a great life lesson for a lot of things, for what I do with this podcast, for what I do at work, for any of those things. 100%. I love that. Thank you for sharing that. That's amazing.
yeah, absolutely.
What else you got for me, Kelton? Any other race stories? Because I do want to touch on, you said something about, being in a band earlier. So I want to touch on that. But do you have any other race stories or anything you want to share?
Really quick, just, like I said earlier, become like your favorite. I know this sounds kind of egotistical or narcissist, whatever you want to say, but so many people get wrapped up in, like, I'm obsessed with what this actor's doing or this other athlete or something. What are you doing? Become like your favorite. Like, hey, put in the work for you to become that. That's just kind of what I want to say. And it's okay to go in with like an underdog mentality, but at the same time, when you put in the work, you got to kind of put in the mentality of, hey, I'm like up here now, and so I deserve to do a lot better because I have put in the work. Like, I did this thing for 2023. I like would hide in the middle of the pack at races and stuff, be like, oh, I'm just figuring out, I'm just trying to finish this one, whatever. But I had to start putting myself at the front again to have that belief again. Hey, I belong here, kind of a thing. So don't be afraid. Like I said earlier, put yourself in the game, build a reputation with you to become the best that you can be. So, and that becomes, hitting stuff every single day.
Perfect. I love it. Thanks for sharing that. I know another thing that you do, you're a drummer in a band. Can you want to tell us a little bit about what you got going on there?
Yeah, fourth grade, I got into playing the drums. This is kind of funny how I got into playing the drums. There's this song for school, something like that. I know it had a drum part in it, and I was like, man, that'd be so cool to play that in front of the school. I remember that, and I was like, that was like my whole reason for getting into it. But yeah, I ended up getting signed up for drum lessons, and I've been drumming since fourth grade. I had the opportunity to play, our first performance was horrible when I actually had my first band. I've been in bands since 2011 up until now, so about 13 years. We just showed up, you think, oh man, this is awesome. But then, like, I go back and look at it now and I'm like, what the heck were we doing? Like, we got somebody wearing like a fake wig. We got like stuff's not structured very well, but I think that's kind of part of doing stuff. You get better as you go, and you learn, hey, we're not doing that. We're not doing the wig thing again and stuff like that. But yeah, I don't look like I'd be in this kind of band, but I'm in a metal band. Okay. I play drums in a heavy metal band. That's kind of all I've ever been in, is that kind of band. But the first band that kind of got some traction was my old band. It was called Silent Sorcerer. We did this whole get up thing where we dressed up and like had this whole theme going. And with that, we had a chance to have our song on a couple radio stations. I got to play in several states. Like, I played in basically all the Western states. Coolest show I got to play was, there's this boat. It's kind of like the Titanic. It's in Long Beach. It's called the Queen Mary.
Yeah, I know the
got
Queen
to play
Mary.
on that boat for a festival. We technically played underwater because we played on like the low level. So where the boat was, like, we were technically under the water.
Underwater.
Yeah, so that was kind of cool. It was a big festival, but it was a gear nightmare. Everybody's gear there. It was terrible that way, but it was a lot of fun and definitely something I can always remember. And played in Idaho, Wyoming, you name it, Western states. Recorded 2 albums in Ohio. We went back there. We had like a contract where we went and recorded stuff like that. And so we had some big opportunities, music videos, It was a lot of fun. But then 2017, I decided, kind of with everybody collaboratively was like, hey, we're not going to pursue this anymore. And so we stopped for about a year. And then my brother worked with this guy who's been in musical theater and stuff. And so in 2019, we formed a new band. My new band I'm in is called Tides of Autumn. Same kind of stuff. We actually do a lot of the old band songs, but we revamped them and they're a little bit better. But we have a music video out on YouTube. We have, Instagram. We have stuff on Spotify and Apple Music. And it's just a bunch of fun, goofy guys. We have songs about like pirates, Mortal Kombat, circus. Like we just kind of, play off of each other and make these cool songs. Yeah, it's a little bit different than, the race mentality. Like you go in there and okay, I want it to look this way. It's got to sound like this. It's more of like a logistics thing, being like playing a show and stuff. We got to make sure we stick to our certain amount of time. It's just kind of a whole different aspect, but I love it. We don't play a ton of shows, but when we do, we have a pretty good turnout, and I've been able to do some really cool stuff that way as well. So
Yeah, what is it that the playing an instrument, playing drums, what is it that it does for you kind of mentally?
just kind of adds a different element to my life, honestly. Like helps me step outside of my comfort zone again and being like kind of trying to get more on the creative side and make things, I don't know, just a little bit different, and gives me just a different avenue to kind of play around in. So more or less that. Yeah.
Good. That's awesome. I wanted to ask you, here you are, 28 years old, plugging away. You look like you're probably in some of the best shape of your life. You're just still working out hard. You're playing the drums. You're doing those things. What are some of the challenges you face?
Like I said earlier, I work out 7 days a week and twice a day. Honestly, every morning, I'd say 5 out of the 7 days I wake up and I'm like, screw this. I do not want to do this. This is stupid. Why am I doing this? Like I'll even hit snooze a few times, but some of the challenges I've had to overcome as of late, or like taking losses, like you're going to lose in life a lot. And so you have to remember to just kind of get up and get back after it again, because that's all you can really do. Jocko, I don't know if you know Jocko Willink. He has this, he's like a Navy SEAL. He has like a book and podcast and stuff, but he has this saying, this thing he talks about where even if it's just not a good day, right? Like if let's say, hey, I'm not feeling it today, going to the gym, right? Just, if anything, go through the motions. Just go do the workout, even if it's not your best. Hey, I'm hitting a PR, or I'm, whatever it might be. Just go through the motions, because you're still making that deposit in yourself that you showed up for that day, and you still did it even though you didn't want to. It might not have been the best, but you still did it. But some other challenges too is just kind of, finding out what's next, what I'm trying to do next, that kind of thing. But one thing I'd recommend to people is, have you heard of 75 Hard?
I have, yes.
I would highly recommend that to people. I've done that like 5 times. It kind of it makes you go outside, because one of the workouts you have to do is outside. It makes you stick with these easy but consistent things for a long period of time. And that's where I believe I've gotten the most deposits, is just, doing those consistent things and doing that program. So highly recommend that to people, because I think that's a big difference maker. It's not like a online challenge. Like it becomes like
Yeah,
an actual program, So
very good.
yeah.
So 75 hard. You talked about, one of the challenges being just kind of when you have to take losses. Like life's tough. There's some losses you have to take. What are some losses for you? Like what would that be?
But there's sometimes, like, I'll use the band again. We showed up. This is going to be a big show. There's going to be a lot of people here. It's a good opportunity. Or like, and it just doesn't work out that way. Or I hit this guy up on the email. This is going to be a sick opportunity. I got this meeting planned with this person. It's going to go super well. And sometimes it just doesn't happen, and that can be really difficult, because you're like, oh, nobody's like listening to me, or nobody knows what they can get from me, what I bring to the table, kind of a thing. But then the only thing you can do, like I said, is just get up and get after it the next day. And there's going to be races. There's so many races I've done out of 81. I'd probably say over 50 of them that I was just like, I thought this is my race, and it just wasn't. So, but then you can just sit there and be like, oh man, Or you can just get back up and, well, I'm going to get after it for the next one. And then you just keep going. But I also think the same thing can be said about wins, because there's so many people, that they're 30 and they caught the game-winning touchdown pass in high school against the rival, and they hold on to that, and that's been their win for their life, But so you got to not hold on, give yourself a certain amount of time to. I think Ryan talked about this on his podcast too, Ryan Head, about not focusing so much on the win, but then getting ready to move on to the next thing, because you can get stuck right there on, hey, I did this thing years ago, but what really matters is what you're doing now going forward. So
Great point.
Yeah.
The other thing you kind of mentioned too, and this is what I want to ask you about kind of before we wrap up here, is the future. You said sometimes it's what you're gonna do next. That can be kind of a challenge. So for you, Kelton, and I know things change, things happen, but what does the future hold for you? Where do you want to go? What do you want to do?
Well, first of all, my thing lately is, because I've done a lot of quantity lately. I've played over 100 shows, done over 80 races, done all these things. I'm trying to focus more now on quality. I'm trying to actually do things that are bigger, that scare me, that are things I haven't really tapped into before. And I'm trying to put the quality of training into that, or the time it takes in the band, or time it takes at work, putting in those high quality spots to do those things. For example, my races next year, I don't have a ton of them planned, but they're all really big. And so it's forcing me to train. I got a 50 miler coming up. First time I've ran over 30 miles will be at Antelope Island in March. I'm going to do that one. And then I'm going to do a half Ironman down in St. George in May. And so those kind of scare me, the open water, that kind of thing. So it's good to have, I'm a big advocate of having something on your calendar that scares you, And it doesn't have to be a race or playing a concert or something, it can be, hey, I really hit it off well with this person at work. Right on your calendar, I'm going to go ask them on a date, or, hey, I've been wanting to go to school, and you write on your calendar, sign up for college, because it scares you. And, you start to convince yourself all these things, but you put it on there, it's going to make you think about it, and you're more likely to do it, I feel like. So, yeah, like I said, just focusing more on quality things coming up quickly.
I like that.
Yep.
And just to kind of wrap us up here, adventure. I mean, this is like an adventure podcast. I think what you're doing, I think playing in a band's an adventure. I think Spartan races obviously are an adventure. Regular races are an adventure. What does adventure mean to Kelton?
To me, adventure means, like I said a few minutes ago, just always pushing yourself to the next level, always finding what more you can do. Because I just feel like we all have so much we can do in our life, and we're all living this much of what we could be. And so I think, go out on a limb, sign up for something, go on a trip you don't want to go on, go to a new place, talk to somebody new, just always you can have adventures even just every day, just trying to make yourself better in small little ways. So yeah, that's what I would say.
Awesome. Kelton, thank you so much for coming on Journey with Jake.
Yeah, you bet. It was awesome. I'm super glad that I was able to do this.
A huge thank you to Kelton Shelley for joining me on the show and sharing his journey and offering some incredible advice on pushing through tough times. I truly appreciate you, Kelton. If you'd like to follow along with his adventures, be sure to check him out on Instagram at kshell36. That's kshell36. Next week on February 18th, Sacred Spaces Volume 3 is officially launching, and I'm honored to be part of it. My chapter, Chapter 8, dives deep into my personal journey and how this podcast came to life. It was a meaningful experience to contribute alongside so many fantastic authors. You can grab a digital or paperback copy on Amazon, and I'd love for you to check it out. The mastermind behind the Sacred Spaces series is Colleen Aves, who first appeared on the show back in episode 99. In the next episode, I'm bringing Colleen back to talk about this project and why it's so important. Not just to her, but to me as well. Be sure to tune in for that conversation. And finally, just remember, it's not always about the destination as it is about the journey. Take care, everybody.